I still remember quite of my French when I was studying at school. So I'm really glad and happy to be here on the French Summit. So it's been amazing these 2 months, all the work that you have done and all the organization, all the efforts that you put together. So thank you so much to have me here, to let me be part of this amazing event. So let's go straight to the topic. I also, for sure, I want to thanks to our sponsors. Without them, anything will be possible because they are our fuel, our energy to keep going and to have a basis to keep building these amazing events. For sure, I just let you hear the official accounts I will say that you can follow. And let's go straight to our topic. So today I'm going to talk about Power Virtualization and Power Automate and how these two Power Platform services can be combined together in order to have powerful chatbots, but also high quality chatbots. So if any of you have already worked with Power Virtual Agent, you should already know that you can use Power Automate to let your chatbot do some automatizations to access information across your organization. And it is amazing how Power Automate can be directly called from any chatbot. But I'm moving on. So I am just going far from this integration. I am just doing a step forward and we will see another kind of integration that we can have. Just quick, let me first introduce myself. My name is Llambí. I come from Spain. You probably notice it because of my accent. I am an M365 and Power Platform architect and an adoption specialist in Cabel, in a Spanish company. And I define myself as a really innovative person. So I'm this kind of people who tries to do everything with passion. And I'm a quite self-challenging. So I always try to improve myself and to never stop learning new things. You can follow me in social media, Twitter, LinkedIn, and of course I also have a blog that you can follow, but unfortunately it is in Spanish, so you will need probably a translator. This year I also been awarded as the MVP in business applications, and that's why all the events, so every participation I do is so special for me because it's a small contribution I do in this amazing and big community. So before I introduce that, I will explain how these two pieces could be put together in order to build powerful solutions. Although this session is a bit advanced and is assumed that all of you are familiar already with Power Automate and Power Virtual Agents, I'm going to quick introduce Power Virtual Agent and to introduce my chatbot. And also I'm going to explain how Power Automate is combined with the UI flows, so the robotic process automation, and how you can build your own UI flows in order to test Windows desktop applications or website applications. So I'm going to go quick and pass through all of these two topics, but I'm going to explain it. So I'm going to ensure that everyone here have the basis in order to understand everything that I'm going to explain. Okay, let's take a quick look to Power Virtual Agent. So these are the newest servers in the Power Platform. This is I will say, the younger sibling in the Power Platform. And Power Virtual Agents is the service to build no-code, less-code chatbots. That's also important here because everything that I'm going to do today and everything that I'm going to explain today is fully less code, no code. So of course you will need quite of expertise. You will see that most everything that I'm going to explain, you will need familiar with kind of, I would say, developing skills, but I'm not going to use any code at any moment. The second important, I will say, characteristic of Power Virtual Agents is that we can combine the chatbot, as I say, with Power Automate in order to access the information across all of our organization. So we can look for people, we can look for files, we can look for answers, and of course, we can also connect our Power Virtual Agent with Asia in order to extend our Power Virtual Agent with the bot framework skills, to connect it with the Q&A, to connect it with advanced machine learning algorithms, or even integrations in our Asia subscription. The last thing that I also want to ensure today is that you understand the difference between topics and entities, because they are the two main, I will say, key features in Power Virtual Agents in order to build successful chatbots. So why is so important to work with Power Virtual Agents, and which is the added value that we could have with Power Virtual Agent? So it let us automate some kind of communications. So this is quite an interface where our users and our external users can communicate and can look for information and can even automate some processes without the typical app design or app interface. But something important is that Power Virtual Agent is nothing but the key feature to keep transforming our organization and to keep the digitalization and automatization of our processes. So every company that is working already with Power Platform must ask themselves if there are some processes or some communications across the company that could be somehow automated and centralized with a chatbot. So let me introduce one of the use cases of this Power Virtual Agent, and this is the case of my, I will say, old friends. So in this case, a couple of friends came to me and told me, okay, Maria, we need some help because our organization is quite old-fashioned. They have really manual processes that we need somehow to be automated, and we are receiving a lot of communication requests and a lot of calls, and somehow we would like to centralize them. So our phones are really burning themselves. So we need somehow to centralize the communication of our customers and our requests. So these friends, they are the Ghostbusters. Probably you know them. And they are quite bored of the phone calls. So somehow they want to transform their process and their business and to centralize everything with a chatbot. So if you know the Ghostbusters, they have a really amazing and I will say pluri-working woman. She's Janine, and Janine is nothing but the administrative, so the desk contact person, and she is burning with all of the phone calls, and somehow they ask me, please, Mar, we need a chatbot to centralize all of our contacts because we don't know how to deal with them. So before to continue, let me move to the chatbot that I built for them. This is a really easy chatbot. So we just have a greeting conversation that I extend a little bit. Let me do some zoom to ensure that all of you can see everything. And this is just a greeting conversation. So, hi, how are you? And this is Janine. This is just the first topic. And then we have a second topic that this is, I have a problem. And when we detect that there is anybody that has a problem, there are three, or I will say three possible branches that we could take in these chatbots. So this chatbot is already configured to answer three types of questions. The first one is, yeah, I would like somehow to interview the guys. So, you know, Ghostbusters, they are so required. I'm listening a baby, a really cute baby. So the first conversation is just, yeah, is answering the request to deal with interviews, magazine interviews, TV interviews. That's so typical when you are so famous and known as the Ghostbusters. The second conversation is just the typical, I will say, troll dealing conversation. So there is always annoying people who tries to, I don't know, to lose time with you, and somehow we need to answer them and to be more respectful that they are with us. So this is just the trigger, are you crazy? And the third conversation is, of course, when we detect that somebody in our website, in our chatbot, is having a problem, I will say a paranormal situation, and we need to provide help and to even schedule a meeting. So this is what is doing the chatbot. So it tries to detect which kind of experience or which kind of paranormal activity the person has experienced, and then it tries to get date and time to arrange a meeting or to arrange a visit of our Ghostbusters. So let's just try it. But instead of try it directly here on the Power Virtual Agents interface, let me show you where I have integrated this chatbot. So of course, the process of transformation is not only to centralize the communications. Ghostbusters, they are also going to the web, finally to internet. And this is the main site where you can contact and you can speak with Janine, that in this case is a virtual assistant. So when I try to speak with Janine, hey, it asks me, how can I help you? And one of the possible problems I might have is that I saw a ghost. When it detects the entity ghost, I will show you to you. It asks me which kind of ghost I have seen. Yeah, I saw a pink ghost. And then it tries to schedule a visit with me. So it asks me for a time and a date. And if I try to put tomorrow at home, it tries to detect a date. In this case, the tomorrow work, it is into the entity. So it detects that tomorrow, if today is 20th, tomorrow will be 21st. So it detects the day, and then it asks me if this slot, it works for me, and then it asks me for the address, and it arranged the meeting. So that will be my chatbot. And as I told you, I also have configured one entity, and this is the, let me see if I have it. This is the problem entity. The problem entity tries to deal with the three main conversations that the chatbot could support. So we would like to interview the guys. I have seen something weird. I have experienced a strange situation, something, yeah, I have seen an spectre. I need your help. I experienced a paranormal situation. You see that here I put a lot of synonyms in order to be sure that I can canalize and I can deal with all kind of paranormal situations. And of course, I have the third conversation, as I told you, that this is, I will say, the typical conversation that we will have if we expose our chatbot on internet. So, are you crazy? You are dumb. Ghost does not exist. Of course, there are always people that they want to have fun. And the second kind of entity is the ghost type. And on the ghost type, I try to detect spectra, ghost, phantasm. And this is important because depending of the kind of the ghost type and the paranormal situation, the meeting, it is arranged thanks to the integration of Power Automate. And the meeting is trying to be arranged sooner or later, depending of the kind of ghost that I have seen. So this is just the use case. Okay. This is the chatbot, quite simple. You've seen, I'm not going to spend more time on it. So let's continue. That was the case. And let me introduce now the robotic process automation that we will use in order to test this chatbot, or I will say in order to have a more quality conversation in our chatbot. So the robotic process automation is right now also introduced by Tomasz Positek on parallel. So yeah, I think that we are both introducing the same topic. So this robotic process automation could help us to automate repetitive tasks on both Windows desktop applications and websites. So it allows us to have even input and outputs. It means that we can have in every flow run, we can have different behaviors depending of our inputs and our outputs. So that's really nice, because then if we want to, for example, automate something like writing down in an Excel cell or writing down an email, but always the remittent is different, or the from or the to person is different, it allows us to be really dynamic and to have different behaviors in every run. So the input and output values will help us in order to don't have to duplicate so many flows in RPA. It generates the script. That's not correct at all, but let me explain it. It generates the scripts of the automatization in the common data service. That's not truly at all, because with the new Power Automate for desktop, the scripts are saved, are stored in the machine, in the local machine itself. So when you automate something with robotic process automation, but you are not working with the browser extensions, you are working with the desktop application, everything is safe in the desktop, because normally these scripts will need to be run in an unattended way. So that's the fourth point. You can run your scripts in an attended way. It means that me as a user in my session, I see how everything is being automated. So I see everything opening itself, closing itself, and doing all the stuff. So I have to supervise the automatization. And the unattended way, it is when I send a bot, to log in a session, maybe in a virtual machine, or even in my own laptop, in my own computer. So in unattended way, it needs to have the scripts stored in the machine in order to automate them. So it was true 2 months ago, but with the new Power Automate desktop, there are quite new things. And the last thing, last but not least, and not less important, the licensing. The licensing is important to be aware of, because robotic process automation is included in the per user plan with attended RPA. So we have per user plan in Power Automate, it costs like $15. And we have an extension of this user license that includes only the attended RPA. If we want, as I say, so unattended processes, we will need to license every bot, so every different unattended flow that we might have with an add-on. Into the robotic process automation, we have 3 kinds of flows. The first one, as I say, will be run, will be built, and will be tested using the Power Automate desktop. This is because the new improvement that Microsoft is doing with RPA and the addition of automotive and the new features that they are having. But honestly, this Power Automate desktop is still not working as I wish. So it's still having a lot of issues. That's why I'm using the RPA that I know that is perfectly working. That is the Windows Recorder and the Selenium IDE. These two are using the browser extensions. So you will need to download the browser extensions. I will explain how. And most important thing today, I'm going to focus on the Selenium IDE. If you are familiarized with user experience testing, front-end testing, you already know what it is. So let's try and let's explain what you will need to build your AI flows. So you will need, as I say, the Selenium Chrome extension. Chrome Edge is the Chromium extension, and the UI flows Chrome app and extension. There are 2 things. One thing is the Chrome app that is installed behind the browser, and the extension that is using the browser to still doing some automatizations. These 2 extensions can be perfectly downloaded when you try to create your own UI flow. So it pops a message if you need the software, the application, you can download it here and just provides you the download URL. It is great, so everything is already prepared. And last is if you want to automate some unattended flows, but in my case, if you want to run some attended flows from another flow, I will explain it afterwards. It's quite a game word. If you need to run these two cases, you will need also an on-premise data gateway. If you just want to record some web UI flows and to run them, you don't need it at all, but I will explain and we will see which is the case that, of course, this data gateway, it is important and for sure we will need it to configure it. So, important, I was talking about chatbots, I was talking about robotic process automation, but how these two topics come together? They come together when I ensure you must test always your bot, always. Why it is so important to test your bot? It is important because if you are developing a chatbot, this is nothing but an application, a software, something that a user will need to, I will say, to interact with. And that's why you have to ensure the highest quality, the highest possible quality. And for sure, you need to ensure that it's stable enough. The second reason it is because the chatbot itself, it has some natural language processing behind, so it uses some cognitive services that you can't control at all. So you don't know if the trigger phase that you have configured can also deal with familiar or synonym trigger phases, or you don't know if the combination of the user entry, the user input, can be detected by the entity 100% sure or not, because everything is processed and is controlled by a natural language processing algorithm, and of course it is not possible to know exactly 100% sure how your chatbot will react to everything that the user could enter or could type down to your chatbot. And the third and most important thing, it is because you are in a situation that you are having unexpected and non-deterministic inputs. What does it mean? So a machine, an algorithm, a flow, you know how this will work because you establish the flow and you know which decisions will take and which are the branches that this will take. But you can't know which is the behavior of a human. So you don't know which is the human behavior because the human behavior is a deterministic input. So you don't know at any moment what your user will type down on your chatbot. So you have to ensure that for any case you are providing a question, an answer, sorry, or at least your chatbot is already prepared to deal with these situations. The first testing that you must always do is the manual. This is the test, the chatbot test that you are using on the Power Virtual Agents interface, where you have on your left side your chatbot and you test that everything that you have configured is correct enough. But the second way that you are missing is the automated testing. So of course, the manual testing is okay, but you are human, you can make errors, you may do the errors, so that's why it is important to automate the testing of our chatbot. The manual testing will help us to verify that the chatbot is working, okay, but the automated testing will validate that our chatbot is really working. How we do that? We do that with the testing path coverage. If you are coming from a developing background, you may be familiar already with this path. But if you're not, I'm going to quick explain it to you. What is the testing path coverage and why it's so important for our chatbot? So the testing path coverage, it says that you must ensure that you are specifying all of the possible testing ways, all of the possible, I will say, conversation ways that there is configured on your chatbot. It means that somehow from the start to till end, you must identify all the possible paths that your conversation can cover. For example, in this case, just so simple, I have a chatbot that it deals with IT support requests, and the purple ones is the user input and the blue ones is the chatbot inputs. So one of my paths here from the beginning till end will be, I need help. The chatbot answers me, how can I do for you, what I can do for you, and then I answer. This is one of the paths. The second path could be from hi till personal devices. And of course, the third path could be from hi till office equipment. This is the testing path coverage. Somehow I have to specify all the possible ways that my chatbot could, I will say, respond to my user. Okay, let's try this on my chatbot. Let's see how this can be directly done with UI flows, which is the strategy that we should follow and everything. You remember my chatbot, my Ghostbusters chatbot. Let's do some testing. First of all, I go to Power Automate and I move to UI flows. Here in the UI flows, I click to new and you see the three possible options. Because my chatbot is embedded into a website, I always need to test a website. So my chatbot is not on Microsoft Teams, and if it were, even if it weren't, it couldn't be possible to test it because Microsoft Teams is not still integrated with UI flows. But even we always have to move to website if our chatbot is in an organization website or whatever. So when I click to next, it asks me a name, just type test, and it asks me for the URL, so where the chatbot is embedded. And then I click launch recorder. Let's see in which screen. Okay. And when I click launch recorder, it opens the Selenium IDE. So the Selenium is here integrated with the browser. So if you don't have, as I say, the UI flows extension and the Selenium, you won't be able to record the steps. What is the Selenium extension? So what is this about? Let me quick introduce it. I just don't want it so big because otherwise I will have visualization problems. Whatever. So here on my Selenium application, what I can do is to start recording my steps. Let me do it first, and then I explain how everything is stored on the script itself. So the first thing that you have to do is to click on recording, and then the browser, I will say, yeah, the browser pops up. For example, you see that I don't know why the Selenium is opening my browser so small. So the first thing that I will need to do is to expand it. And I have here my chatbot, and I just have to do what a human, what a user will do in my website. So I just need to interact with the chatbot as a normal way. So this is Janine. How we can help you? Hi. Let's put the same case I introduced before. I saw a ghost. When you have seen the ghost yesterday street, and then it starts asking me everything. Once you have finished your conversation and once you have tested one of your first paths, remember you first have to establish your paths, your testing paths of your conversation, and when you have finished with the first one, you just stop chatting, you close the browser, and then you stop recording. Here everything that Selenium has captured are the steps that I have done as a user. I have clicked on the website. I have introduced with my keyboard some input. I have introduced again. Of course, I type the enter key. I introduce some input, and everything is recorded on the value column. I can already advance to you that these values can be dynamic values. So you could have dynamic input values on your UI flow in order to have this execution every time completely different. So let's test it. In order to test it, I'm going to slow down the execution time. Otherwise, you will see everything so quick, running so quick, and I click run test. When I'm clicking, I'm not touching anything, just to ensure you. What it's doing, the Selenium is reproducing the same as I've done before. So it is typing for me, it is writing down for me, and of course, it's closing the browser for me. Important, always you have to record the closing to close the browser, otherwise you will have a lot of opened windows. So here you have all of the commands. I encourage you to be familiar with these commands because afterwards, when you finish the recording, you can enter your own commands, you can modify them, you can even put some wait commands because it is so common that Power Virtualization is not fast enough, so not faster as the Selenium. And that's why sometimes Selenium is trying to type and to enter and to input information too quick for the Power Virtualization for our chatbot. That's why I had to slow down the execution, but you can even put some wait comments if you see that is going too fast or the server is not answering too fast. That will be my case. And once I finished, I can just save it. And once I save it, everything will be done. And here I have my test. Every time that I want to edit or test it, I just click the test. I don't know why today is Selenium opening in so weird mode. And once I open it and I test it, I can just again run the test and simulate the conversation. That will be how we should and how we have to test our chatbots, because it is the way how we can ensure that we are covering all of the conversation paths in our chatbot. Of course, you will see once you start working with this extension, with this Selenium, that not everything is so easy. So let me show you all of the paths that I have configured for my Ghostbuster chatbot. So here, let's compare it. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 possible paths on my conversation. So this is not only the 3 typical conversations that my chatbot might have. This is also everything that the user may cause to our chatbot. For example, this retry question is when the user is trying to type something that the chatbot is not expecting at all. So for example, random things or random entries. And this is to test how my chatbot is answering to the user to ensure that everything is working fine and any entry, any input that the user may have, I am dealing with it. Important. One typical question that I answer in this kind of sessions, the people ask me, okay, Mar, what happens if I have changed something on my chatbot, but the test is still running on my chatbot? If you tested your chatbot, if you change your chatbot, but you have only changed the text itself, so one of the outputs, one of the answers, it doesn't matter. So the behavior is the same, the path is exactly the same, so you are testing the full behavior as before. The problem is when you introduce a question of the chatbot, or you introduce an extra message of the chatbot, or you even split the conversation or whatever. This test will fail because the test is expecting that the chatbot asks us some questions, waits some time, and if I try to input a text when the chatbot is not expecting a text, then the chatbot will fail, and so the conversation will fail, and of course the execution of my UI flow will fail. This is how we ensure that we are covering 100% the behavior of our conversation. Okay, that's great. So I was showing to you here how I was configuring all of the conversations. This is all of my testing path coverages. We can discuss afterwards, if you want, how we can detect these paths. I think that is something really important. And here you see the values, and I can also have some output values. I have to say that the output values in a website is nothing but cookies, is nothing but code, is nothing but I can't take the answers of my bot out and to expecting it on the Selenium to record it. So this is why it's so important to understand the flow is not running perfect because we ensure that the chatbot is answering perfect. The run finish successful if we ensure that the behavior between the human and the chatbot is the correct one, despite of the answers of the chatbot. That's important to take care. Okay, once I have configured my UI flows, they are amazing, but I always have to go on the UI flows interface in order to test them and in order to execute them? No. What I can do is to call these UI flows and to integrate them into a normal Power Automate flow. So if I go, I'm just going to go so quick because I don't know why I've been 2 days trying to fix it, but the gateway is not working at all. These days they've been doing updates on the gateway, and unfortunately I can show you how this is working, but at least I have it already configured and you can see how this is configured. So you can manually trigger a flow, you can wait for an automated trigger or whatever you want, and afterwards when you want to call an I will say attended UI flow, you just look for the UI flows here and you can run a flow built with Selenium. When you select that, it asks you, I have this on my different examples, I ask you for the UI flow, I'd ask you also in which kind of web browser you want to execute it. I always select Google Chrome because I have sometimes problems with my Edge Chromium profiles. That's something that I think that they should be aware of and quite fix it. And of course, you can select if you want to run it in an attended way and unattended way. Unfortunately, as I said, I can't run it because of the gateway, but when I execute the flow, I just let my hands off and everything is run automatically. So I don't see the Selenium popping up, I just see the browser popping up and popping down 3 times, each time for the the run flow, sorry. And this is how I could integrate the UI flows in order to don't have to go to a UI flows interface and run one by one. I just can integrate all of them in one and run it at once, all of them. Before I also talked that I also explained that we can have also have input and outputs in UI flows. That's correct, but we can have them in, let me open it. We can have it in the UI flows that have been recorded using only the extension. This is what you have seen. We can have the input and outputs only in the Power Automate desktop. So when I create a new test, just wait 1 second, takes quite long, right? So when I want to have input and outputs, this is an option, a feature that is only available in Power Automate Desktop. So only when you configure your scripts here, you can include your web recorder inputs, you can specify input and outputs. So unfortunately, when you run your flows from here, there is still no way to specify your inputs. That is sad. So I guess they will work on it and they will improve it. Okay, so I know that we are quite on time. So let me quick move to my final conclusions, and we could even have a discussion round, or I can even answer all of your questions that you might have. So quick conclusions from my side. This is of course a personal opinion and I would say professional opinion. So there are still, as I say, limitation in UI flows. So we still have Windows applications that we can't test, for example, Microsoft Teams. So we can still probably record Microsoft Teams integration. So it is still not working at all. And as I say, I'm expecting the UI flows. So in terms of web recording, we'll have the input and outputs available also for the integration with normal Power Automate flows. Of course, we also have limitations in Selenium IDE. I didn't talk about it, but we can if you want. I've been using Selenium for front-end testing. And when you use the Selenium extension integrated with the UI flows, there are some commands that are not working and some features, like you can have multiple projects, you can deal with multiple recordings into the same project, and that's something that was amazing for the normal Selenium testing. So let's see how this is being improved in the next months. Also important to be aware of, if you integrate some Power Automate flows and some bot framework skills, these must be independently tested. So these are different software, there are different extensions, there are different applications and services. So you have to test them in their own service interface or their own service, I will say, ecosystem. The entities and topics in a chatbot must be alive. And that means, with the next point, that you must continue improving your testing. And each time that you make a change on your chatbot, you have to ensure that your UI flows are still successfully running and you don't have to arrange anything. And if you have, then you have to arrange it. And these two conclusions, these are personal. I think that these UI flows are amazing. It helps us to test some chatbot experience. I have already tested in real chatbots, like this use case as you saw from the Ghostbuster, but it gives you a false security sense. So you think that you have tested everything, that everything is working and you can deal with everything, but this is a false security sense because there is always something that could fail. So Power Virtual Agent is still not the perfect service. It still has some internal errors. It could take longer sometimes on the conversation that the Selenium is expecting. That's why it gives you a false security sense. And this is something that I really want to ensure and to say this is not something that will ensure that your chatbots is 100% working, but it will help to increase the quality. That's the important, I will say, fact here. And of course, as I say, it has a good impact. And this is my leitmotif always. Everything that you do in Power Platform, everything, even if it's no code, you must test it. That's a must. And that's all from my side. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your time. I hope it was interesting enough. I wish I had much time to explain in detail about the UI flows and so on. But if you have any questions, I will be glad to answer it right now. So you can write it down on the chat. And of course, you can follow me on social media, and everything else that may come to your mind, just ask it to me. Let me check. I don't know if we have questions.
Yes, you have one, I think. The best one.
So I see, so we can have one combined test UI flow that will combine basic QA and flows. The problem here is that if you record the UI flow with a chatbot that is integrated with a Power Automate flow, the problem is that you are depending also of the time of the execution of your flow. And honestly, that is something that even if you wait for an event, for example, if you wait for the chatbot response on Selenium, it is not 100% perfect, and it always will come up with kind of errors. So I always say that, of course, UI flows are still not perfect, and these use cases are working perfectly if you only have conversation at all. So basic Q&A or basic arrangements. You saw that I have a step where the chatbot tries to arrange a schedule. Honestly, sometimes this path is working and sometimes not, because the Power Automate takes too long to arrange the meeting, and then the Selenium is not waiting the time enough, and then it fails. So it tries to input a keyboard input. The chatbot doesn't experience or doesn't expect the input at all, and then it fails. So it can't continue testing and it fails. So yeah, at least you can. Emmanuel, you raise your hand. I will be glad if you just unmute yourself.
Yes, hello, Mar. Thank you very much for your session. It was really interesting. I was wondering how much time you consider it took you to feel comfortable with creating a chatbot.
With the time, you mean?
Yes. How much time do you think it takes for a person to get to know how to create a chatbot?
Yeah, that's a good question, because if you already starting from a Q&A document or a Q&A website, that is so easy, and you can have, I will say, functional chatbot in a really short time. But under my experience, I also help, I will say, business profiles to develop the skills and to help them, to support them in order to let them create their own chatbots. And for a person that does not have any technical skills, it takes quite a month, a full month, to feel comfortable with the output of their chatbot. But after this month, they are able and capable to build amazing chatbots. And when I say amazing chatbots, it's not only Q&A, I'm also talking about integration with Power Automate and other automatizations, like, yeah, in this case, it was scheduling a meeting, whatever.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Of course, it depends of the complicity, and it depends of how difficult and how complex you want to build your chatbot. But I was also these last months working with the UI flow in order to see which is the experience of a website chatbot and the UI flow. So if the integration was possible and if it made sense enough, and it does. So honestly, this is not the unique chatbot I have tested with UI flow, and it is amazing. Each new feature or each new update that Microsoft does in UI flows, in the integration, I might say it, with Power Automate, is even better each time.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. If you have any other questions, I will be glad to answer you all. So just write it down on the chat. If not, thank you for your attendance. Thank you for your attention. And thank you for the organization to let me be part of this amazing event. I hope I did it good enough, and I promise myself that I will improve my French. I have to say it, and this is quite sad because I'm coming from the northern part of Spain, so I used to learn French at school. So I promise here in front of you that I will improve my French.
But your English is perfect.
Thank you.
Yes. Is
Yeah.
there room for a last question?
Yeah,
Ah,
sure.
yes.
No?
Sure.
Yes. I have a question about, let's say, the number of runs and the way we can throttle through the bot, let's say, some repetitive requests from users. So, for instance, we know that there is licensing limits on number of runs, either on flow and, of course, on messages in bot. So what is your recommendation, let's say, to throttle maybe excessive amount of the repetitive interaction on the bot, maybe for a group of users or same users? So how you can to manage just in terms of cost the bot, especially for a wide audience? Do you have some recommendation for that?
I might not have experience, I will say, a blocking situation. So I always could deal with all of the chatbot requirements that the users had. So talking in terms of power virtualization, I also have helped to build really amazing and complex chatbots with a lot of topics and a lot of entities. And I might not have experienced, I will say, a delay or performance delay at all. So there is not anything that could may affect in terms of as bigger as you build your chatbot, as slower it goes. No, that is not something that I have experienced at all, I have to say. And in terms of UI flows, so the good thing here is that the license that you need to build the UI flows, it is the Power Automate for User. It means that the user can build as many flows as they want. So no limit. This is my developing tenant, but in my professional tenant, we have so many flows into the same user, and it is not an issue at all. The problem here is when you are talking about unattended flows, so unattended UI flows. These flows that can run in a virtual machine without a user supervising the execution, so you don't see in your screen what is happening. The limitation is one flow, one add-on, and this, I have to say, this is a stupa because the licensing is quite expensive.
Okay.
I hope I answer your question.
To be honest, my question is about, let's say you manage the cost that's generated on the bot, and especially the number of runs and messages that you have maybe to keep in a certain range. When you have, let's say, the risk of some questions being repetitive and you are triggering the flow, even if it's not needed, let's say, because it's the same request by the same user or for similar situation. So it's just how you can design the bots to take account that maybe to throttle what the user can request in certain amount of time, and let's say a period of time, a day, I don't know, to make sure that everybody is able to use the service, but with the cost and special licensing limits on number of runs, especially for flows, for instance. That's what my question all about.
Oh, okay. Now I understand. So I have to say that because now we are working in the trial subscription, and I always encourage our customers to first try the trial, so to work with the trial. But you are right. The problem here is the number of sessions that you may have in overall of your company, and that's true. And the problem how you can deal and how you can advance yourself and be prepared for this behavior. I always recommend, if you are designing a chatbot, first of all, you have to define a target. So how many people will work with this chatbot, and how many times do you expect average? How many times you expect that this chatbot will run or will answer in a day? You remember the session is just how many times, a session is 24 hours of conversation. So you have to anticipate yourself and to design a strategy. And I am aware that is quite difficult, but honestly, and the limits that they have for sessions, this is not something that you can easily deal with. That's right, because you can't see or you can't prevent that you are already on the limit, and you want to prevent that the chatbot stops answering, because otherwise you will raise the limit. I don't have a property answer for that. So I am really sorry, because this is something still new. And I think that these situations, we will face them as soon as they come. So that's a good question.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you for your attention.
So yeah, we will close this meeting and you can jump to the other one that will start in a few minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.